welcome, folks here at the Community Club in Brookside, and you folks who are joining us at home. Glad to have you with us tonight. We're going to be muting everybody at home so that we don't have some extraneous noise. And there will be some time for questions afterwards. If you folks at home would please use the chat function to ask questions if you care to. And if people and the audience here have questions, well, I will repeat them so that you folks at home know what we're all talking about. Some announcements. Going down the list of things that are going on these days. The Lock 2 project in Wharton is making progress. It's close to being done. It was the feature of Wharton Canal Day in August, just 2 weeks ago. There was a ribbon cutting ceremony, and volunteers from the Canal Society of New Jersey interpreted the site for visitors. Everybody had a marvelous time. Very good. At Plane 2 in Ledgewood, the restoration work there had been delayed because of dam construction. So that's now completed. So that work is due to start late fall, go into the spring. Likewise, restoration work at Plane 4 out across from Waterloo has been sort of trailing along. And so the archaeology work and reconstruction work should be going on late fall, again, into the spring. These things take lots of time. We've got some greenway projects underway. 3 active greenway projects, one at Dorsey's Pond in Montville along 202, at Griffith Park in Boonton Township, and one near NGIT in Newark. So those are all going to get kiosk and signage for the Morris Canal Greenway. Our Waterloo programming is going to be going on this year into October. So hopefully you will join us, and possibly some of you out there will volunteer. We need volunteers in order to be open at Waterloo. And sometimes it gets a little thin. So Bobby Egan is our volunteer coordinator. So if you can contact her, or if she contacts you, hopefully you will agree to join us. We have a lot of fun at Waterloo, and lots of interesting people to talk to. Please consider volunteering. Events that are coming up. Boonton Day is coming up on the 25th of September. So that's next weekend. How did that happen? It's a Sunday. Fall Festival on the Green is October the 2nd, and the same October the 2nd is Caldwell Street Fair. Whichever rocks your boat, join us at one of those, or volunteer to help us at the table. There'll also be an Industrial Heritage Walk on October the 8th, and that's going to be the Edison Mine Walk. A good walk. Please join me for that. Just flipping my pages. And of course, a program meeting in November. The subject has not yet been picked. Last time, we made an announcement that the Canal Society is making a big step forward, and we were going to be renting office and archive space. So that has happened, and we're in the process of moving in, getting organized. Already all of the archives have been moved to the new location, and our archivist, John Breitow, and office manager, Janice, she's going to yell at me for that. Janice Escobar, our office manager, have been very busy, and loads of volunteers getting things put together. The archives are going to be in good shape shortly, but the office space needs a lot of work. And so when this gets together, ready for prime time, you will all be invited to come and join us for a big opening. Stay tuned. Bierce is reminding me to describe it, but it's excellent Class A office space. Everybody will be surprised. It's really quite elegant and quite nice, but you'll all be invited to come and see what we've done. So stay tuned. The September newsletter is almost done. And so there will be a story on page 2 describing our new space, with pictures and description of what it's all about. So stay tuned for that. That will have loads and loads of information. Announcements. Mr. McKelvey, I think you've got some things to talk to us about.
Yes, first of all, mention that Food Day coincides with the museum for a day at the railroad yard in
There we are.
talking loud enough. Yeah, I wanted to mention that Booten Day coincides with the Museum for a Day at the railroad yard in Booten. That's United Railroad Historical Society. They have not had it for the last couple of years due to COVID, but they are going to have it same day, Sunday, the last Sunday in the month of September. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Any other announcements? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll get on to our program now, and that's going to be me. Jeff, do we have up the first slide? So this is a program about inclined planes, and it started off as a very simple talk with a couple of different ideas. Actually, an idea that came out of the archives. Somewhere in the archives, I found some articles about English canals and tugboats and all kinds of mysterious things, and can never leave an idea like that alone. And so I looked into it and found all kinds of interesting things. And so the presentation is going to be about where some of the ideas to solve the problems here in New Jersey of trying to build a canal across the highlands of New Jersey. Where did those ideas come from? Did they come from anywhere? Who dreamed them up? Did they come from England, where they had already been doing lots of interesting things? Well, we'll see. I'm going to tell you some things about what was going on in England long before the Morris Canal was dreamed of here. So let's start off with slide 1, please. So again, this is going to be an exploration into the beginnings of this kind of technology. And so it started off simple, and this is going to be a rambling talk. We're going to talk about English canals, American canals. We're going to jump back and forth across the Atlantic a couple of times and wind up back here. So hopefully you'll enjoy as we go. Another slide, please. So back in the 1820s, Mr. McCullough was dreaming up the Morris Canal. And so this is a story you've heard many times, but he knew that Great Pond, that scribbly drawing on the left-hand side is supposedly from his hand. And he scribbled the map of on the back of an envelope of Lake Apacon. And boy, if he could just own that and dam it up and make it a canal reservoir, everything would be great. He could build his canal across New Jersey. And that was great until Mr. Lemuel Cobb, a real surveyor, told him that the Great Pond was 900 feet above sea level, and that was not good. He had to figure out a way that actually would work. And so he contacted Professor James Renwick, and that letter over on the right-hand side is actually a letter from McCullough to Cobb and Renwick, inviting them, please come and meet me, and let's take a look at the lay of the land and figure out what we can do about this. And so Renwick was a professor of what passed for engineering and science back in those days. And there weren't a lot of people in this country with what we would call engineering know-how in those days. And so Mr. Renwick was available here in New York. He's teaching in New York, and he was enlisted to help see if possibly he could lend something to the problem of climbing over the highlands of New Jersey. And lo and behold, yes, he said, yes, we could do that. As a matter of fact, he had an inclined plane idea already in his back pocket. So let's have another slide. So this is all kind of based on the idea of moving things from the background of our industrialized world, as you have things that are in inconvenient places, and if you can only move them to places where people will buy them, you can make a lot of money. The trade has been going on as long as men have walked the earth, but when you can manufacture things and sell them for big money, all things are possible. In England, a very small country, but well endowed with coal and iron and all sorts of very useful minerals and natural products. There's an awful lot of coal around Newcastle, right there, that red dot on the map. And so, but then the picture on the other side depicts the condition of the roads in that little country. Not very good, not very acceptable for moving things around. As a matter of fact, in the background of that picture, you can see there's a factory or an ironworks down there in the valley. But boy, moving the things that the factory needs to operate to its door is going to be a problem. However, England is a small country with a big, long shoreline. And if you can dig some coal in Newcastle, you can deliver it to all kinds of places all around the coast and get a taste for what coal can do for you. Coal means factories, means business, it means wealth. And so that's really good. But there's all kinds of folks inland that are left out. And so how do you solve that problem? How do you get at the places that are inconvenient and move things from where nature put them to where you want them to be? And so we're going to look at the Severn Valley. There's a red square down there at the bottom. All kinds of interesting things to be found in the Severn area. And so let's go to another picture then. This is the county of Shropshire. And so the Severn River flows through there, and there are iron mines and coal measures to be found on high ground all through that area, and commerce to be made. The Severn River is navigable. Newport is another outlet for goods on the other side of the island, and so the Severn, the Shropshire Canal complex was started in the 1790s with a whole system of canals that eventually were interconnected that accessed those raw materials and brought them to places like Coalbrookdale, where they could be used. And so that was a canal system, and it was very detailed, as you can see, with many branches going many different directions. But to make it all work, you needed to have some of those gnarly, interesting inclined planes. There's just a bunch of different places in that network where just canals cannot reach. You have to do something different. And so how did those guys tackle that problem? Another picture. That's the Wappenshaw Junction. That was an important connection in that map that we just saw that allowed the branches to go off in several different directions, and for them to start thinking about how they're going to solve that problem of getting at those mines and get those linked up with their canal system. Another picture. Okay, so one of the things that they came up with were tugboats. A very simple concept. This basically, they were originally just wooden boxes that would float, loaded up with about 9 feet by 6 feet, and really capable of no more than 5 tons capacity. But they could fit into the narrow canals that they had built, and they could link them up, and they could actually be set up in a line of from 50 to 30 of those tugboat boxes, and pulled by a team of horses. Pretty simple technology. Worked just fine. Very easy to build. The pictures across the bottom are some ones. It worked so well that it evolved over the years, and they started making them, making metal ones that actually lasted a lot longer. And the one on the far right is actually in the Colebrook Museum. That's one metal one that has survived. Another picture. Okay, so basic concept of those inclined planes is that you got mines and on higher ground and higher levels of canals, and you need to get down to those lower level of canals to make the connections to go where you want to go. And so those are that's 2, 4, 6 of the 7 canal inclines that were part of the Severn system, and some of them are remarkably big. But they're relatively simple. They're basically what they call self-acting planes. You've got a counterbalance going on. You've got a loop of cable over a winding drum at the top, and you've got a heavy boat going down and pulling a light boat up. Doesn't need a lot of energy to do that. Most of these inclined planes were powered by steam engines. Steam engines weren't up to doing very much in those days, but they didn't have to do a lot of work with these self-acting planes. It was the counterbalance between a heavy boat going down and a light boat going up that did most of the work, and the steam engine was required to pitch in when required. We're going to have a whole bunch of pictures of the Hay incline, because that's one that still exists. This is a picture. Yes, Bierce is reminding that we have walked up that one. Okay, several times actually. Operating from 1791, that's a long time ago, to 1894. 213 feet high, 900 feet long, 15-degree angle. You can see it's quite a structure. Those double track, remember those two boats counterbalancing each other, rails with a powerhouse at the top, country road going over the bottom of the plane. Another picture. Okay, there's a contemporary picture of the machinery that made it work. Looks pretty complicated, didn't it? Not up to modern engineering, but basically a wooden structure that was able to pull those tugboats on a cradle. Hey, just like the Morris Canal, huh? Up the incline. And this was a summit plane. Again, like the Morris Canal, there was a hump at the top that kept the water in the canal from flowing over down the hill. So the boats had to be pulled up the plane, over the summit, and down into the water of the canal. And so all that machinery was arranged to do that. And again, double tracks, two tracks. Another picture, please. There's a drawing that kind of explains. They've got a steam engine in the back providing energy that was required. You have some wheels that move the motion from the direct contact with the steam engine to a wheel that's past the summit of the plane. A chain pulls the cradle and the tugboat up the plane and is far enough behind the summit that it can actually pull it over the summit. Another picture. There it goes over the summit, and gravity takes it down into the water again. And there's an actual picture up in the right-hand corner of the summit. As Beer said, the plane still exists. It's in the Iron Bridge Gorge Museum, and they have done a wonderful job of restoring and exposing the remains of what was going on there. Another picture. There's a picture of the actual summit, just as drawn, over the top, down into the water on the other side. You can see how small this is. Another comparison, Morris Canal things much bigger. They had good ideas, but the ideas were smaller. Okay, there's how do you get the next boat, over the summit and down the plane again? Well, there they've got another wheel at the other end of the operation. This one definitely operated by the steam engine that pulls the boat and the cradle up and over the summit and lets it be lowered down and counterbalancing the other boat coming up. So, and there's a picture in the upper right that shows a model from the museum. And in the lower right-hand corner, you can see those two black dots are the haystack boilers for the steam engine. These are really early steam engines, not a lot of oomph, but they were used to maximum capacity doing work here. Another picture. There's some pictures of some of those pictures of some of those wheels from the diagrams, a picture of the model. In the lower left-hand corner is a contemporary drawing that kind of done at the time. They're very proud of what they had accomplished. They actually constructed this pretty complicated machine. Complicated is a key word here. It's very complicated. Lots of things. The wheels have to turn. Lots of axles have to be greased in order to make this work. And all for those little tugboats, those little 5-ton apiece tugboats. Another picture. There's a picture of the plane in 1893. The rails are gone. That bridge is still there, but the right of way of the plane still exists. Another slide. Okay, now today, a whole different story. The museum has taken over most of Colebrookdale, and with many units. There are docks and warehouses and an iron museum and terracotta works and Bliss Hill, which is a whole restored community. So it's a huge museum. It's a couple of days of work. Many things, wharfs and warehouses, so, and all very beautiful in an English kind of way. But the picture, and right in among, well, it is not just a restored Williamsburg, because real people do live in among all of that. It coexists with life in the town. And so there are some additional remains of that inclined plane on the left. Pictures of the engine house with its stack, and then looking down the plane, and you can see there's actually a little walking path with a rail. You're encouraged to walk up and down the plane. No keep off the grass signs. Please come and explore. Another picture. This is another one of those inclined planes, and there's many pictures of this one, so it's good. And as you can see, it went into operation in 1893. And went out of operation in 1921. So that's a pretty long working life. And so this one wasn't quite as tall or as long as the Hay inclined plane, but you can see that it served well. And the picture in the upper right-hand corner, looking down the plane, you can see the English industrial landscape as it was then. So it was quite intense. The area was heavily used to the point of excess. So all of these transportation assets did brew up quite a pot of industrial mess. Another picture. Okay, another picture. There's a really good picture of those cradle cars. Really simple stuff, but very effective. And there's a tugboat sitting on one. And you can see in that picture, there's actually a rope or a cable going up the hill and rollers that it rolls on. And again, a pretty bleak landscape. Tugboats, the boat's about a ton and a half. The cradle's about 2 tons. The cargo is 5 tons. And so the load being carried up and down the plane is about 8.5 tons. Another picture. So we're going to pop to Morris County now, to Mr. McCullough and Mr. Renwick. And so things are a little bit different here. This Morris Canal that they're dreaming up, well, that's going to have to cover a lot more distance than the Shropshire canals. And also, it's going to be a bit different because the heavy loads have to both go uphill and downhill. And so they're going to have to think up something that works just a little bit better than those tugboat canals. And so the drawing on the lower right is the contraption that Mr. Renwick had dreamed up. He already had this in his back pocket. And so it's quite interesting. Caissons on cradles held level and pulled up and down the plane. Again, this was totally counterbalanced. He didn't envision any kind of a water wheel or engine required to make this work at all, but kind of pie in the sky. And everybody liked this. And actually the first inclined plane built here on the Morris Canal at Rockaway was supposed to be Mr. Renwick's design. Another picture, please. However, there's a list. Plane 6 in Rockaway was the first inclined plane, the first prototype. It was supposed to be Mr. Renwick's design, but no, they decided that wasn't going to work. It really not explained anywhere that I can find exactly what happened, but his design may have been tried and they just couldn't build one. They just couldn't build that one. So they built a simpler design. And so this was a summit plane, just like the ones that we saw for the tugboats. And it kind of worked. The newspapers wrote it up, and some were skeptical, some were hostile, but most were kind, but it didn't work all that well. So you might think, I've often said this, but many you might think, what were they thinking? What were they doing? Did they have a plan? Did they really know? Did they learn anything from what was being done in Europe? Because what they wound up doing, they just kept building prototypes. They built another summit plane in Boonton, and actually the picture across the bottom is from a banknote from the Dover, from a Dover bank. I can't remember the exact name, and that's the only picture of one of these planes that represents a gives us any idea of exactly kind of what they. And so you see the concept there. We've got counterbalancing boats, one up, one down. There's a water wheel there under the top of the planes providing the power. And basically you can see some idea of what it was all about, but very little evidence to tell us exactly what was going on. They built another one exactly like that in Montville, and then they kind of changed their minds. There was a contest. They wanted a better design. They came up with a better design, and they started building lock planes. What was that all about? Well, they had a lot of trouble bringing those much heavier boats up and over the summit of the plane and then down into the canal. As soon as you get that counterbalance situation works really kind of pretty well, but as soon as the lower boat gets into the water at the bottom of the plane, you lose all the oomph. And unless you have enough energy to pull the whole system and the heavy boat up and over the summit, it doesn't work all that well. And if your machinery isn't powerful enough or sturdy enough, the strain is too much and you break the inclined plane. And so they started building lock planes. And we have a little bit more information about what that was about. Another picture, please. This is that balloon fuel plane, and this is a picture of it up in the upper right-hand corner. Doesn't tell us a lot, but this is not really a detailed discussion of Morris Canal inclined planes. We could go on all night talking about this. So we're just going lightly over some of the aspects of what this was all about. There's a patent drawing in the lower left-hand corner that kind of matches the technology that you see there. So we have some idea what they were thinking about. Again, if you don't get it right, try again and try again. Another picture. In the 1830s, 1835, Michel Chevalier, a French scientist, visited the United States and spent a lot of time in taking a look at the inclined planes here on the Morris Canal. And he actually made some very, very detailed drawings. This is the plane at Port Warren. That's plane 9 in Warren County. And so he left us some very good detailed explanations of what they were doing with these lock planes. And they were complicated. They did work. They worked fairly well. Their capacity was not what we liked, but they did manage to get the canal through its first 15 years of operation. The drawing kind of explains the difference here. You've got loaded boats coming up. You've got 2 divisions to the Morris Canal. You got a western division where you're climbing uphill to Lake Apacon, and then you got an eastern division when you're going downhill all the way to the harbor. So one way you're lifting those heavy boats up the plane. On the other division, you are lowering the heavy boats down the plane. So 2 different kinds of tasks, but again, a lot more energy is required here to make this work than what the British were doing overseas. Another picture. Okay. By the 1840s, it was realized this was not good enough. The canal company had been reorganized in 1844, and they realized that the canal had to be larger and more efficient. And canal engineer William Talcott organized a plan to make the canal better. And we do have quite a bit of information about what he did and how he did it. And this led to all of those drawings and pictures that we have today. And we love so much. This is the technology that we understand and we see the remains of today. We have copies of some of his notebooks in the upper on the right, his own writing with some drawings about how he envisioned this first concept, the first try at his concept to see how we would make it work. And then some of his drawings that still exist in the state archives. The picture in the center is one of a reaction turbine that of course we would recognize today. But of course, when he was thinking it up, it was just a brand new concept. Well, I'm sure he wasn't even quite sure that they could make one.
Talcott was educated as an engineer, whereas the other guys were not.
I don't know if you heard that, but Bierce is saying that Talcott was educated as an engineer. So yes, we got a guy with some engineering, engineering training on the job now, and he's approaching the problem from a completely different point of view. And if you go through his notebooks, you can tell how meticulous he was. And he approached this in an engineering fashion. You folks who are engineers or know engineers, you know that they approach a problem not like I do. I'm an artist and not an engineer. So. But I have great respect for what they do. Another picture. So, of course, again, one of the major differences here, he was going to get rid of those water wheels. He was going to invest some money in those reaction turbines. And so these are the drawings that we know and love, that we've seen many times. And pretty much understand exactly how they work. But he was going to try a different power source. Another picture. And also previously on all of those planes, the English planes and the early Morris Canal planes, they were using chain to pull the boats up and down the hill. There was no such thing, hemp rope broke. There was no substance, strong enough to be able to do that kind of work until Mr. Roebling invented ways to take to make rope out of wrought iron wires. And so an immensely strong invention. And so he actually began twisting them into cables. And by the time Mr. Talcott came along, he could actually manufacture a very sturdy wrought iron cable that would do the job. And so that was what was used on these planes. And so the first prototype for this level of technology was Plane 6 at Port Colden, and these drawings are made for a panel that we're doing for them out there. And so a little bit of a strange arrangement to we who have familiarity with the planes here in Morris County. The powerhouse was kind of off to the side. They had to put it someplace where they could get the proper fall of water to make that new rotary turbine work. And so the cable has to make some very fancy turns, but still in all, we'll see next picture. It actually worked very well. Talcott's stuck with the counterbalance, boats coming up, balancing boats going down. His cable had to make a right turn at the top to go to the powerhouse and back, loop of cable going around. But and there's a picture of the plane across the bottom. And so when it was tried, it was demonstrated that it was better than expected, incredibly powerful. The turbines could do much more work than the water wheels had been able to do. They could not only make this system work with counterbalancing boats going up and down, they could actually just pull a 70-ton cargo and cradle and cargo up and down the plane. That's about 120 tons without being counterbalanced. They could actually stop it on the plane and then start it again. They had enough torque. And so this is Plane 6 in Warren County, and it's a plane that's being excavated right now, not quite ready for visitors yet, but someday you'll be able to visit this one. And this was the first one that they experimented with. And from there, they used the same technology, first on the Western Division planes, and then eventually they replaced all the planes, taking about 10 years, I believe, to accomplish that. Another picture. Okay, well, at this time, everybody wanted to get into the act. And so the Morris Canal was interested in the coal trade, the iron business, very close to home here in New Jersey. Coal, an important fuel for an industry. But in Pennsylvania, they were thinking about, they were going to be competing with the Erie Canal for the Western trade. Pennsylvania Mainline Canal was conceived that would connect Philadelphia with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, of course, is on the Monongahela and Ohio rivers, which gives you total access to the heartland of the country. Wow, wouldn't that be cool? Get a transportation system that's really going to make Philadelphia the town to invest your money in. And so didn't really work out as planned. They had big, long sections of canal, but to get from Philadelphia to the Susquehanna River at Columbia, it was the territory, the terrain was just not up to canal standards. They really could not build a canal across there. So they settled for a railroad. The Columbia Railroad from Philadelphia to Philadelphia to Columbia was conceived, and it also needed 2 inclined planes. It needed one at Belmont from the Philadelphia area to get up to the high ground so it could negotiate most of the terrain or over to Columbia, and then another plane at Columbia to lower it down to the Susquehanna before the mainline canal could pick up boats and take them all the way to Hollidaysburg. Yes. So another picture. So at this point, another major obstacle, the ridge of the Allegheny Mountains. What are they going to do with that? So again, inclined planes and railroads are partnering to take boats up and over the mountains of the Allegheny on a portage railroad. This is a national historic park. You can visit this today. And so combining railroads and canals, again, the canal ends at Hollidaysburg, and 10 inclined planes take first just cargo, and then actually they started building those section boats that you see in the picture above, and you could transport those boats up these planes powered by steam engines and to level sections of railroad, and to another plane, and up till they reach the top, and then down the other side. A awkward arrangement. The loads that could be carried were not great, and it worked. You see the color picture shows the top of one of the inclined planes, and you can see there's a railroad, a steam engine pulling a line of cars away from the powerhouse at the top of one of the inclined planes, heading along one of those level sections to the next inclined plane to take. I believe that's the summit level, so they would be going down the other side toward Johnstown. Another picture. So there's a picture of a boat pulled up, and they had steam engines in that shed at the top. The interface between the plane and the railroad. More powerful steam engines at this point, capable of doing quite a lot more work than those tugboat inclined planes in England. And the diagram across the bottom shows you inclined planes from Hollidaysburg going up and over that ridge and down the other side. So it's 37 miles long, with 10 inclines, and then at Johnstown back into the canal, and then canal traffic all the way to Pittsburgh. So it was a long stretch. It opened and ran, but it did not operate efficiently enough or attract enough business to really be successful. And another picture, please. Other places in Pennsylvania, also everybody doing the same sorts of things, trying to get the last bits of canal technology connected up with the stuff they were going after. The coal carrying canals, the Lehigh and the D&H Canal, Delaware and Hudson Canal, all had nasty little places at the end where their canals could reach to, but they couldn't quite get to the mines. So those coal mines where the good stuff was that was going to be their main cargo. And so there were gravity railroads in Pennsylvania that made those connections from mines to canal. And this is the coal docks at I think that's Hawley. There are so many pictures I don't recognize them all, but many chutes, lots of tracks, many cars coming down, lots of boats being loaded, lots and lots of commerce going on here. Another picture, please. There were three. There was the Switchback Railroad, the Lehigh Coal Navigation Company, brought coal from Summit Hill down to Mock Chunk. Most of that's a walking path these days. Started off very simple and became a very efficient operation. The picture on the right is their coal chutes that brought the coal from the last incline and dumped it into canal boats on the Lehigh Canal. And then the Pennsylvania Gravity Railroad and the Delaware Hudson Gravity Railroads were all complicated routes where coal cars were pulled up and sent down not quite level, down gradual stretches of railroad and then pulled up and down as they needed to be to cover quite long distances to connect up Pittston to Hawley and to Carbondale to Holmesdale. And there's a whole bunch of this is still left for those who are really good explorers. You can still find some remains of these things and quite a bit written about them. Another picture, some pictures of, I like that picture on the right with a long line of empty cars going down one of these stretches going back to the mines. The loaded cars had already been hauled up and gone down to the coal docks. Again, the picture in the center. The picture in the upper right is a D&H canal boat, much bigger than Morris Canal boats. A lot bigger canal, bigger capacity. Another picture. Okay. A little known incline plane system at the very end of the Lehigh Canal. Lehigh Canal is built from Easton to Mock Chunk. And then the upper Grand section was created through going north from Mock Chunk through very windy, narrow valley to Whitehaven. But that was as far as they could go with canals. It was quite a stretch. That upper Grand section was very difficult to build, very expensive. And a railroad section was required there once again to reach out to the coal measures. And so at the end, they had to reach down into the valley of Wilkesboro, and the Ashley Plains were built there. First in 1837, built and rebuilt several times because they kept being useful. And so another picture. These were basically into modern times with regular standard gauge rail cars being pulled up and down these plains. And so you can see pictures of those tons and tons of coal moving over these plains and then down the other side to market. There were three of them. I think this is considered to be a National Historic Site, but I think a lot of it's on private property. You can go and well, when you're a veteran trespasser like myself, there's no trouble exploring such places. But anyway, another picture, please. So, all right, we're going to jump back across. What were the English doing all of this time? We were doing all those wonderful things over here. what had they been up to? Well, it seems that, well, their inclined planes, that last inclined plane stopped operating in 1921, but the whole idea of the tugboats hadn't gone away. They still had lots of narrow canals. They had railroads to compete to, but water transportation is still the cheapest way to move things around. And so in the 1920s, they come up with the idea of taking those tugboats and making them a little bit larger and calling them compartment boats, and actually designing how they could be linked up in strings with a bow in the front and a very powerful tugboat, either pulling or pushing. And they would actually line these up from 20 to 30 boats long and move them from mines to harbor towns in the Yorkshire area of Great Britain. Another picture, please. So there's a long string of boats from 15 to 30 boats. You imagine how on earth would they have navigated a string of 30 of those compartment boats. Mr. Bartholomew was the guy who developed them. And so, but very flexible. You see, there's a bow section there in front of the tug, and then the tug, and then a long line. And there were cables strung between the compartments that would help them steer around corners. So this was one of the first things that made me interested in this topic. There were some things in the archives about these compartments and tugboats, and something I never heard of. What was that all about? But for quite a while, Britain was still deeply into the coal trade. They were burning coal at their power plants and their gas plants. They were selling coal and coastal trade with Europe. So they were taking these compartments by water transportation in these long strings to towns like Hull and Grimsby. And next picture. And loading them in these huge steam-powered lifts. We pick up a whole compartment, tip it over, and dump it into a freighter and take it wherever it needed to go, up and down the coast or into the European trade. And these, apparently the last of these big dumpers went out of business in 1970. So these kinds of things just go on and on and on. If they do the job, they continue on. Another picture. I think we're almost over. Well, okay, we're going to jump back across the Atlantic. And so you might say this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but we're not, doing the same kinds of things with our intercoastal waterways, our inland waterways in this country on a larger scale. Those are huge barges pushed by a very large towboat on the Mississippi and canalized sections of the rivers in the central part of the country. Not on the Hudson. Nope, they don't do that. Okay. Beer says. I don't think I've ever seen that. Beer says that she's seen a tow of 8 barges on the Hudson. Okay. Okay. Okay, well, Bierce is a fireboat crew member, so she's seen more boats on the Hudson than I have. Okay, another picture. Just a chart that fascinated me. I found just recently some equivalents. A large boat, a large barge, is equivalent to about 15 rail cars or 58 large semis. A 15 barge tow, that's a towboat with 15 barges pushing, is equivalent to 2,500 car trains, 2,250 car trains, or 750 semi trucks. So you can't get those barges to go every place. Well, they certainly aren't going to bring anything. I'm not going to bring you your Amazon package, but certainly if you've got a load of big stuff to move any place, there's certainly nothing wrong with water transportation. One more picture. So there's one of those long tows, certainly not 15 barges, but a long tow. And there's a map that shows the navigable inland waterways still functioning in this country. So I think that's my last slide. Questions from the audience and from those of you at home, if anybody's coming in. You yes.
About 20 years ago, the fireboat that I worked on had Fairbanks Morse opposed piston engines, which are not made anymore. We had 5 of them. We needed a parts engine. Now, if anybody here is an old car guy, they always have a parts car. We had a couple in our barnyard. And at some point, my mother said, time to get rid of them because we no longer had the car that the parts went to. At any rate, our chief engineer, Tim Ivory, was very skilled at finding things on eBay. He found 2 submarine engines for sale in Seattle. So I sent a check for $1,000 to buy the two engines, but then there were, how are we going to transport it? So I looked into this, the cheapest way, and this is considering all factors, and transshipping is a big one because these were on the docks in Seattle. If you loaded them onto a boat, brought it around through the Panama Canal, brought it up the East Coast to New York, you only had to take it, put it on the boat and get it off the boat. And then it moved by truck, and they sat in Tim's backyard for a long time, but they were there for parts.
Before we started, there's a young gentleman in the back who said to me, well, you seen one inclined plane, you've seen them all. Hopefully I showed you some new inclined planes. Jeff, do we have any questions from the online?
So we had 2 questions online. First was when it showed the slide of the earliest canals or the earliest income planes, there was no plane 9 east, even though all the other ones were east. Do we have any idea of why that was not part of the initial set?
Once again, this is not a doctoral thesis, so I couldn't come up with a. It's the story of the Morris Canals and inclined planes is a presentation in itself, and I could not find a reference for when plane 9 was built. You would think that plane 8 and 9 would have been built at the same time, but that's in Montville, and so. Stay tuned. We'll do another program on that with some greater detail, some gnarly detail about exactly what went on in Morris County.
Other question was during the upgrade of the planes from the initial design to the reaction turbines, looks like it took a long time. Was the canal closed down during that upgrade, or was there some other arrangements made to keep the canal in operation?
Good question. They tried to, don't forget, you know what happens to the canal in the winter? It's closed down, it freezes up. They drained the canal, and a lot of the work went on in the off season. That first prototype, they really wanted it to be done by the spring, and they wanted a lot of the work to be done before everything froze up in January. But there was many delays. This is a long story, but it's a really good story that we won't tell in detail. So it took much longer than they expected to build that first prototype. But then the others were built one at a time or 2 at a time as the financing and the contracting were available until they finally got them all done. I think by 1860 they had finally replaced all the planes. So it took a long time to do, mostly in the off season when it would not interfere with traffic.
One more popped in. Have you seen any evidence that the earlier Morris Canal was influenced by the inclined plane that operated at South Hadley, Massachusetts, along the Connecticut River?
I don't know a lot about that plane, so I can't give you a good answer. Nope. I knew somebody was going to come up with one that I missed. So sorry, I don't really have a good answer to that. I'm not really familiar with that incline. Questions from the floor, folks? Mr. McKelvey, you ever? No worry. Some comments from Bill McKelvey.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. One of the earliest trips that we went over to UK as the Canal Society in a group and chartering boats and doing the canals. One of those earlier trips, we ran into a boat that was selling coal along the canal by the bag for people to burn in their fireplaces. And it was a couple that were school teachers, and they had the summer off, and that's what they did, kind of semi-vacation and selling a little coal. Fast forward to the present, they have now closed the last of the coal mines in the UK. The steam railways, the steam tourist railways, and there's about 150, 175 of them in England, had been in the last few years buying coal from Russia and also the Ukraine. That's drying up, and they're trying all kinds of solutions such as pelletized wood and whatnot, but it's tough to get the BTU they need to run a steam locomotive. So they're now considering maybe they just might open one of the mines or open a new mine. Just thought you'd find that interesting. Now I told Joe can I just add on my other story is some of you may know that over the years, I have been selling books and publishing books, and I decided, you know what, it's about enough. I'm done with that. And I decided to donate books to two organizations in the Lehigh Valley, the National Museum of Industrial History and a new organization called the Industrial Archives and Library. Both of them happen to be in Bethlehem, and both of them coordinate. In other words, I can donate a load of books to one, and they'll take what they want and send the rest to the other organization. But this is not only books. It's could be videos, DVDs, could be publications of various organizations such as SIA Journal or the railroad organizations or whatnot. I have so far delivered about 6 carloads of books to them, and I still have my own personal library that hasn't gone yet. But do any of you remember a Canal Society member by the name of Charles Lehmans? Yeah, he was 97. You remember? He was 97, and he died a year and a half ago. And his niece is going through his house in which he was born in Union City. And he was a bachelor, a prolific reader, and he bought anything and everything. I have so far gotten 3 carloads from the niece. The 4th is coming on Sunday, and she says there's at least 100 boxes left in the house that they're going through. It's all great stuff, and they're tickled pink to get it out in Bethlehem. Nobody in New Jersey has been interested, but boy, they are really interested in accumulating that stuff out there. So, yeah, but they come and get it. Thank you, Joe.
Our feet are not nailed to the ground. We make pickups as well. Thank you, Bill. But just another question from abroad.
2 late ones came in here. Do you have any information about how the traveling locks on the early Morris were mated with an upper lock and how the 2 were sealed? And the other was, can you recommend any places to go in PA to see some of the planes there?
Okay, they're difficult to answer technical questions about. I assume there's a question about the early locks and how they were done. The Chevalier drawings are very detailed, and so we will have them up on our website at some point. And so the best thing is to wait till you can see those drawings. And as far as the places to visit, the D&H, the D&H Gravity Railroad has a website with a very, very good series of maps that will show you how you can explore and then find the remains of that. They are scattered all over. There's no, great park or restoration of those, but it's for those who love to explore. Go to the website and check it out. The Portage Railroad is a museum, and the remains of the Pennsylvania Mainline Canal, again, are scattered and few. You need to be an explorer to find those. Hopefully that helped somewhat. Another one? Okay, I'm going to add one more story to Bill's story about coal and Beer's comments about coal. I remember Great Britain burned coal for a long time. I remember the first time that Beers and I went to England and explored some of the little villages off the beaten track. You could smell the coal. And instead, we in this country don't remember that. But it definitely, that soft coal burns smelly and dirty. And so you could tell, it was definitely a smell on the air because they were still burning lots of coal in Great Britain. Anyway, hopefully you found that entertaining and interesting. Hopefully I showed you some things that you've never seen before. One more comment.
I have a comment on coal smoke. When I bought my house, there was a painting, an original painting. I believe it's done by a student of Thomas Cole. We know exactly where it was painted. It's painted in Cold Spring, New York. And it was quite dark. And what I could see of interest was an oak tree in the foreground. And when I took it to Swain's, the art dealer in Morristown, to have it restored, I said, well, if you can salvage just that oak tree, that would be fine. And they called me a few weeks later. They said, well, we had it cleaned. So it had like 100 years, at least 100 years of coal dust on it. And here we're burning anthracite, not soft coal. So we were burning a much cleaner coal. But when the painting came back, it was like, oh my God, there's so much to see in it. There's a fellow in the audience who photographed it for me a couple of years ago, Charlie Fraze, guy I went to college with. And it's a really beautiful painting. So coal, I remember cleaning mirrors all the time. You had to clean a mirror every week because in the winter, because you got coal smoke on it. And that was anthracite.
Okay, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed the presentation. This presentation will shortly be up on our YouTube site, so that if you've missed something, you can see it again. Please consider volunteering. We need volunteers for Waterloo. We're going to need lots of volunteers next year when we're getting to actually operate that lock in New Forest Park in Wharton. And so please consider joining us in volunteering. And the September newsletter will probably be out in the next 2 weeks. Please enjoy that. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all in November.